she really is praying for me. And let me tell you something, you guys are blessed. Yes. I'm just telling you, you're blessed to have Kathy, because she is, well, I just see what she's done. And, you know, with God's help, and you guys are all a big part of that, but she is a special, special lady. And I pray for you all, more than you think that I do. Okay, then the next thing is every time that I get called, and I've been called here a couple times to talk, you know, things run through my mind as I walk in, and I think, well, you know, here I get called again. Every time that they come and they say, can you speak here, I have to go to Lee. I got to talk to him. And Lee will tell you it's the truth, because I have to walk up to him and say, Lee, what did I talk about last time? Because I don't want to repeat it again. Every single time. I can't even remember. I mean, you know, when you speak at different churches, your messages, you know, they just kind of flow. And I think, boy, the last thing I want to do is go in there and talk about him. He remembers every time he comes in. So if he's ever not here at this church, you guys may hear a repeat, is what I'm telling you, because he's readily available. So I'm very appreciative of that for what he does for me. So let's talk a little bit about the Word today. And who does the bulletins? Who does the bulletins? Man, I mean, Donna, what about putting the picture of the bloodstained door in the... You're better than good. I mean, I pick that up and I think, my gosh, the picture's in there. And I think, wow. I want you to know that probably, because this story means a lot to me, I'll probably keep that bulletin in my Bible. Yeah, I probably will, just for the simple fact of that picture being in there. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about today. The next thing, the most important thing of the day, is I forget what time I'm supposed to be finished. Any church there puts a clock up front, and I know where I'm at. You know, it's time for dinner. So, at what time do I need to be finished by? No, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. Tell somebody. Lee will tell me. Lee, tell me what time I need to be done. Lee's an eater. I mean, what time does she normally finish up? Just tell me that. Oh, I won't go that way. You'll be out of it. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about Moses today. And when I talk to you about Moses, I want you to know that I think about the heaven, and I've got this picture in my mind about kind of what I think heaven's going to look like. And I may have shared it with you before, but I really like photos, and my heaven is kind of filled with photos, and I think everybody might have. My thought might be that everybody might have their own picture there. Once you decide to give your life over to Christ, that He might hang a picture of heaven for you. And then I think about those pictures, and some of you will know what I'm talking about, some of you won't know what I'm talking about, because I went through this senior picture thing. I've got a senior this year, so I've gone through this senior picture thing. That's really a lot of fun. That's cheap, too. And so I think about it, but you see sometimes that picture, that senior picture there, and then you'll see all of those little bitty pictures. Have anybody ever seen that where they're in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and you get to see how they grew up, and then they come to finally be a senior. And I think about that picture, and I think, maybe, just maybe, when I get to heaven, maybe everybody's got a picture like that God hangs on the wall in heaven. And maybe it's not your birthday, but maybe it's just special times in your life that He was there for you. And I think about that, and I think, I wonder what my picture would look like. I think about all the special times in my life, of having children and asking Him to be my Savior, and all those things of where they would be around those small pictures, and then finally my final picture that would be the day probably in the middle that I accepted Him into my life. And it's a nice thought. I think I could ponder about this. So I think about Moses with that today, and I think about Moses and his picture there, and then what would be all of those pictures that would be around Moses today that would be that. The first one is I think about Moses, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of cover those pictures. And the first one would be Moses as a little bitty baby in a basket. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that picture that I think about with that. And this is a special thing. I talked about this the other day. I'm going to be at the women's walk the other day. I talked about this with the group the other day and touched a few people. And let me tell you that story. Pharaoh was getting a little bit aggravated because the Israelites were kind of overpowering the Egyptians with the way they didn't have all the tools and they didn't have all the weapons and things like that, but they had more population. The population was growing fast. And Pharaoh got a little worried about it. So what the Pharaoh did was he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to section these people off. I'm not going to let them all be all together, because if they're all together, then they all kind of team up together and they're going to end up uprising and overthrowing them. So he did. He set them in different neighborhoods, and they went to different neighborhoods and they stayed there together, and he took a lot of the things that they were able to do, the fun things that they were able to do, away from them, because he wanted the population to drop and he wanted them to be miserable. And, you know, what I've come to find out is that when you take a lot of things away from people and they don't have much to do, that doesn't help with the population much because they still go about doing that thing. And so the population grew. There wasn't much to do. So what happens is they started reproducing at a higher rate. And that wasn't working out for them very well. So finally they came up with this law. He said, okay, here's what I want to do. This is not working for me. He said, I'm going to kill them. I'm going to kill all the boys that are born. So if there's a boy born, they came up with an edict, and every boy that was born got drowned. That's the truth. That's how cruel the Pharaoh was. He drowned them all. As soon as they were born, boys. Left the females, but he drowned the boys. So couple got together, and they ended up having this child. They looked upon this child, and they saw him, they named him Moses, and they said, you know, he's special, we're not going to kill him. Now, I think about that. I stop and I just step back just a little bit, and I think about that myself, and I go, you know, I bet there were a lot of parents that tried to do that. You know, they weren't just going to give them up willfully and just say, here, go kill him, go drown him. So they probably all tried to hide him. But it didn't work out very well for them because there's nobody else that really made it or that we know about that made it. But they did. So what they do, they hid him in a cupboard. That hid him in a cupboard. I mean, that's what the Bible says. It says that they opened up cabinet doors and they shoved him in there for time to time to hide him. And you know that people were trying to save these people, so the armies were coming down and they were searching for him constantly. It wasn't just once in a while. They were constantly searching for him. And they were able to hide him. And evidently didn't cry when he was in the cabinets, and they never found him. And finally, he got a little bit older, and they stuck him in a basket. They stuck him in a basket and then stuck him out in the water. Now, look, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not taking the baby and putting him in a basket and putting him in water. But that's what they did. They lined the basket, and then they laid him in the basket, and they hid him in the bulrushes, which was all these tall weeds. And this basket kind of floated along, and his sister would go out there and kind of watch him throughout the day. And one day, Pharaoh's daughter came down with her entourage. She didn't go anywhere. You know, this is Pharaoh's daughter. She didn't go anywhere without a lot of soldiers. Came down from nowhere and was just going to go down to the water and get a drink. And runs across this basket. Pharaoh's daughter. Now, if I was to tell you that story, you'd look at it and say, well, I'm sure she reported it and they killed him. And she didn't. She opened up the basket. She looked down the basket and she liked him. And said, I'm going to keep him. And that's what she did. She kept him. The sister who was down there in the water looked at Pharaoh's daughter and said, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I think we ought to go find somebody to nurse him. She goes back to the house, gets Moses' own mother, brings him back, says, I found a woman for him to nurse on him. Moses got to spend his own entire child with his own mother, living in Pharaoh's house and never got killed. I want to tell you something. If I told you that story today, you'd say, get out of here. I mean, that challenged the intellect a little bit. When you start talking about baskets and cupboards and kids and parents and all of that. God is so good to take care of all the little things. Listen to me. Look at me. Everybody look at me. You quit tossing and turning in bed and worrying about what's going to happen 2 weeks from today. Amen. You guys need to quit that. You guys need to quit tossing and turning and worrying about, I don't know what I'm going to do on this test, or I don't know how I'm going to do at school, or I don't know what I'm going to do about this bill to be paid, or I don't know what I'm going to do about work, or I don't know what I'm going to do about education, I don't know what I'm going to do about my family. You know, you got to quit worrying about the things that you can't control. God's in control of this. He's always been in control of this. He's never ever let that go. And there's peace in that. When you finally come to realize that, and you finally I find peace in that. Little things come up in my life that I used to just, I'm not going to lie to you, I had a little bit of temper. Things used to bother me a little bit. And anymore I look at it and I said, what is going on here? Well, I get stopped at a train sometimes. I tell you what, 10 years ago, when I got stopped by a train, it's a good thing the engineer probably couldn't have got to him. They stop down there and change drivers and they check. Have you ever seen that in Vincennes? They check. I'm not going to go there. But I don't worry about that anymore because here's what I understand. Here's what I come to understand. If I get slowed down, if I'm late coming to church, coming up here to preach at church. The only reason that I'm late is because if I was to be on time, maybe, just possibly, maybe, I'd be in a car accident because it was going to happen about a mile up the road. And I have to look at it like that. So God just saved my life by making me late. And if you start looking at things like that, your life changes a little bit. But that's called faith. Real faith. So that's the first picture of Moses, and now I want to talk to you about the second picture of Moses. The second picture of Moses, he's a grown man, about 40 years old probably. And probably, I would say, he's a pretty good looking lad. Was living in Pharaoh's house all that time. Had everything he wanted. Everything he wanted. Now let's understand something here. That when I say that he lived in Pharaoh's house, you got to understand there were the Egyptians and then there were the Israelites, and the Israelites were slaves. And where was he supposed to be living? He was supposed to be with the Israelites. And he wasn't. He was with the Egyptians. He wasn't only with the Egyptians, he was with the Pharaoh. I mean, he had everything. I mean, he had the nicest four-wheel drive truck you could imagine. I mean, he had PlayStation 4, big screen TVs, he had it all. I mean, he was eating fine. I mean, there wasn't anything. Whatever he wanted to eat, he was eating. There wasn't any day that went by. And then all of a sudden, something started bothering Moses to where he said, I got to make a choice in my life. I'm going to live with the Egyptians and I'm going to have all of these things, or I'm going to live with the Israelites, my people. Which one am I going to do? Now let me tell you that before I go into this and start making somebody to get mad at me or feel bad about something, bottom line is you have to understand that God wants you to be successful. I mean, he does. He knows the plans that he's made before you, and he wants you to prosper. So when you have things and you've been given things, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel guilty about the things that you've been given. That's God blessing you for the things that you've done. But I want to tell you something. What happens is when you get in a situation where you have all these things like Moses had, and he had a lot of great things, but the bottom line was he was living a life and living around people that just weren't the kind of people that he needed to be living around. And he had to make a choice. Am I going to live with the Egyptians and go about what's going on with the way of the world, or am I going to go over here with my people and give all of that up, and am I going to live my life toward God? I mean, he had a crossroads in his life that he had to make a decision in. And we have those every day. I got to make decisions in my life. And every decision that he made over here was bothering him enough that he said, they're killing the Egyptians. Or the Egyptians are killing the Israelites. Am I going to continue to be a part of this? I want to tell you something. And you need to hear this, because this is what's bad. Now, I hate to say this, probably never get asked back again. But if all of a sudden you think to yourself, and you go and you ask yourself this question, and you say, if you struggle with that at all, if you struggle with the fact that you think you may have too much, then you do. That you're not giving enough to me. Now, if you don't, if you feel good about that, then the Lord's blessing you. And the bottom line is that if you're over here and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know about that, you can't live here on Sunday and be one way on Sunday and then leave here immediately and be somebody else. And that's what Moses was doing. He was living one life, feeling the other way, and I'm telling you, that ends up not working out for anybody. Right. You just can't do that. And if you think you can, then you're probably not a Christian. Now that's the hard part about it. If you think that you can live one way and fool people the other way, I got news for you, you're probably not getting there. It's just the cold hard facts. So then I talked to you about the things that they went through. And he said, I'm going with them. I'm done here. Now I wrote some things down that I want to talk to you about before I go into this bloodstained cross. Because I want you to understand what they went through. So Moses says this. He says, I'm done. Pharaoh, I'm done. I'm going over. I'm leaving the Egyptian people. I'm going over here. I'm going to live with the Israelites. Then he got with the Israelites and he spent some time with them. He says, Pharaoh, you got to let my people go. We're not going to be slaves anymore. You got to let us go. We're leaving. So here's what happened. Now I'm going to go quick here. I want you to hear about some of the things. First one is that the Lord went to Moses and he said, we're going to have a plague of blood. Some of you don't know about this, some of you do. We're going to have a plague of blood. And the Nile River turned into blood. Now they said it was so bad, when I researched it, they said it was so bad that all the fish died. Now I want you to put yourself in the middle of Egypt when the Nile River and all the fish died. Do you think it smelled well there? I mean, I think about that and I think, oh my gosh, that'd make me want to move out right then. All the fish had died. And here's what happened is Pharaoh went to his magicians and he said to them, he said, I want to see you do that. I need to know whether or not this is truly what God's doing, or if you can try and do that. And he got his magicians together, and guess what? They did it. They did it. They were able to do it. How they did it, I don't know, but they were able to do it. So Pharaoh was hard-hardened. You know, the thing that amazes me is this. If it was really that, I never have thought about this until last week, but when I looked at it, I thought to this, why Pharaoh didn't go to his magicians and say, you know what, why don't you just turn it back into water? I mean, why not just turn it back into water? I mean, if you could turn it into blood, why couldn't you just turn it back into water? But he never did that. And so he's hard-hardened. So then God went back to Moses and said, hey, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him this. I want you to tell him to free his people. If he doesn't free his people, I'm going to have another plague, plague of frogs. I don't know how many of you like frogs. I don't mind them. They're not anything, sticking sometimes to the side of my house, or something like that, but they'll be jumping around. I don't mind frogs too bad. They said that the frogs were so he said that they were in everywhere. They were in the houses, they were everywhere. I mean, frogs were just everywhere. They couldn't get rid of them. And he said he went to his magicians and said, can you do something about that? And they said it was because of all the water that turned to blood, and so all the frogs moved up. It made sense to Pharaoh and his hard-hardened. Then they had the plague of the gnats. I don't know how many of you like buffalo gnats. I'm not a big fan. So I can just about imagine the swarm of buffalo gnats that went through that tunnel. Said that the gnats were like dust in the air. Next was the plague of the flies. My wife's not a big fan of flies. The minute she found out that when they land they puke on something, it just did something to her stomach. So not a big fan. Flies were all over the people. They asked the magicians what could they do about them, and they said they couldn't do anything about that. They'd given up. The magicians had given up. Then came the plague of the livestock. Egypt's livestock, this was the amazing thing about it. He said, I'm going to kill all the livestock. He went to Pharaoh and said, I'm going to tell you, all your livestock's going to die. He went to all the people, and the people got a little nervous about it. You know what happened? All the livestock of the Egyptians died, and the Israelites people did not. Right. Now that was enough. I'm going to tell you, when that happened right there, all the other things that happened were probably starting to turn people. When they saw the livestock die, the Egyptian people, not the Israelite people, I think at that point in time they looked at it and said, this guy might have something. And so the things that happened after that, I think they started to listen to a little bit more to. They said that there was a plague of boils that came out. He stood up in the air. He came to him and he said, God's going to make boils come upon people. And he picked up some soot out of it and he threw it up in the air, and the air scattered, it said, and boils began to fill the temple. And then at that point in time it filled out. And people began to get boils all over them. The plague of hail. They said it was the worst hailstorm. I looked it up. It said it was the worst hailstorm ever in the entire world. That's how bad it was. He said, I'm going to make it hail. Now I want to tell you something. Here's what I do know. I don't have to be there. I know this. With all of these plagues going on, the minute he announced there was going to be the worst hailstorm ever, I'm going to tell you right now, the Egyptians began to move their stuff inside. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but they were beginning to believe. They may not have been with the Pharaoh with this. They said, the bottom line is I'm going to get my, I don't know what's happening, but I've seen what's happening. I'm moving my stuff inside again. And then there was the plague of the locusts that came, and an east wind picked up that day. Before they could do it, the locusts just covered the ground. They said it looked like the ground moved. There were locusts everywhere, all over the ground. And then finally, the plague of darkness came. And the amazing thing about the plague of darkness when it came, and he said, no, I'm not letting those people go. The plague of darkness came. It got dark everywhere, but where everywhere that the Egyptians lived, but it did not get dark where the Israelites lived. Right. That's unbelievable to me. I can't even fathom that. But it became dark. It was dark for 3 days. And then finally it came down to this. And every time Pharaoh would say, here, I'm going to turn people loose. Every time he did it, he would come back and he would say that, here we're going to turn them loose. And then he would get rid of the plague. And then he would say, no, I'm keeping them. And finally he said, no, I've had enough. He said, I've just had enough. The Lord said, you go back and you tell them this, I'm going to put the plague of the unborn on them. And that's where we get to the picture today. The plague of the unborn. And you need to hear this. Here's what I want you to do, Moses. This is exactly what I want you to do. I want you to go to your people and I want you to tell them this. I want you, now this is going to cost them some money, Moses, but this is what I want you to do. I want you to go out and I want you to have them all find a lamb. And this lamb cannot be blemished. It cannot have anything wrong with it. It's got to be a good lamb. Now, I was going to cost some people tonight. These are slaves. I want you to butcher that lamb, and I want you to take that blood from that unblemished lamb, and I want you to take the hyssop, and hyssop was a plant. I want you to take that hyssop, and you can see it in the picture. You ought to look at the picture. I want you to take that hyssop. I want you to dip it down in the cup that came from this bloody lamb, and I want you to rub it on the sides of your doorways and on the top of the doorways, and that's what we're going to get. That's what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is we're going to have this Passover. This is where the word Passover comes from. And what's going to happen is this angel of death is going to fly through your city. And he's going to fly down. And if the angel of death flies down and he sees blood on the doorsteps, he'll pass over that home and he will not enter that home. But if there is no blood on those doorsteps, on the doors, if there is no blood on them, then I'm going to enter into that house and I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill that firstborn. That's what's going to happen. And you go and you tell him, Moses, you tell him that's what's going to happen. You tell him. And that's what he did. Now I got to ask you something. That challenged your intellect just a little bit. That story, now you be honest with yourself for just a second. I'm finishing up here. Does that challenge your intellect just a little bit? When I tell you, if I was to come in here today and I was going to tell you that story, and I told you that story, and I told you that's what you had to do, would you look at it and say, get out of here? It's a bunch of crud. And I think that's what the people thought. But let me tell you this, and you listen to this. Listen closely to this. That there are people outside this church that they hear this message. They hear that there was some guy that died on the cross and his blood shed for him, and that blood is counted for all the sins that they've had, and that they can be forgiven and they can enter into heaven. They look at that story and they say the same thing. Yes. They say the exact same thing. It's no different than the story. You look at that story, you look at the story of Jesus on the cross, and you look at it and say, that's hard to comprehend for some people. And they look at that and they can't get a hold of that. And I'm here to tell you something. You listen to this, because this is the cold hard fact that I tell people. That thousands upon thousands of years ago, the only way that day was through a blood-stained door. And that's the way that it was in Egypt 1,000 years ago. And right here, right now in this church, the only way through it, and the only way to that salvation, is through a blood-stained cross. Amen. And that's what I'm here to tell you today. I don't know where my picture will be. And some of you may look at it and you may say, I don't know if I'll even have a picture. I'm a pretty good Doubting Thomas. And I would look at you and I would say, his avenue's right down here. He's got an avenue right down here that they named after him. You walk down that avenue and you see your picture hanging on it. Because he went and he asked for salvation. I don't know. I argue with my parents a lot. And, I don't really get along with my stepmother or whoever it might be. And I argue with them a lot and say, yeah, that's down Joseph's avenue. Joseph's got an avenue right down here. And your picture will be hanging down there. You go down there. I'm telling you, when you ask for his salvation, you get a place. Amen. He hangs your picture on the wall. And I'm telling you, I don't care if I have one of those great big one of those great big pictures that hang with the mirror and all that. I'll settle with one of those wallet size. I'll settle for a wallet size just with a pen. Or maybe even a magnet on his refrigerator. Man. That's okay with me. Thank you, Lord.
Okay, you guys can stand. He became sin, rooted of sin, that we might become his righteousness. He humbled himself. Carry the cross, that's so amazing, that's so amazing. Jesus, the
Lord, I thank you so much again for this church body that's here. I thank you again for the leadership and all the things that this church has become. Well, my prayer is that everyone here today can leave and can just take a deep breath through the course of the week when things begin to go wrong, and just understand that you are still on the throne. That you've given us another day. And if you're going to give us that gift of another day, Father, then we need to make the most of it. Help us to remember that. I thank you for this Bible. I thank you for these great stories of these great people. They still pertain thousands of years. They still pertain to us today. Pray travel mercies upon everyone here. Most of all, Father, I thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. He's given us the ability to ask for our sins to be forgiven.